Welcome back. Thank you for staying with Morning Express. In case you're just joining us, we're taking a look at some of the stories that have been highlighted on today's dailies. Of course, touching on political developments, touching on the education sector, and of course the health sector has been adequately covered in today's dailies. Joining me in studio to help us deliberate on these matters and more, Dr. Njogu Barua, who's the former Gishugu Member of Parliament. We're also joined by Arthur Odera, the former Teso North MP, and of course Joseph Kioko, political analyst. Gentlemen, many thanks for your patience. Let's continue interrogating these matters. Right before the break, we touched on the latest in the education sector. And Daktari, let me just touch base on this particular story. Of course, we expect the CS for Education, Professor Magoha, to release the varsity placement rules today, where candidates who have just received their results will get a chance to review their options based on the grades and the career aspirations they have. But of course, this comes in the backdrop of cutbacks in financing, especially in tertiary institutions. Universities are getting less, 9.4 billion. HELB is also getting a reduction in its budget by 2.2 billion. Talk to us about this, because we well know right to education and right to quality education especially is definitely right to each and every Kenyan. What's your take on this?
My take is that the reduction in funding is basically a reflection of the health of our economy. I think our country doesn't have money, and if it has money, it doesn't have as much as is expected to have. So if the available kit is small or is not adequate, there must be cuts in all sectors. That's why you see they are cutting in the universities, the donation funding to universities, they are cutting funding to higher education loads board, and that's going to, of course, to affect the support the ministry has been giving, especially the needy children, needy university students. I think over and above that, I would like to say that my friend Kioko has touched in details about the universities, what's happening there, and I don't go that space because he has done it very well. But I want to mention that some of the issues, one of the issues that need to be addressed in the university is the management of the universities themselves. As it is now, there's quite a very low morale in the universities, because when you look at this moonlighting Kioko is talking about, people teach and they can be paid after 3 years or 2 years. I don't know how it happens. Students are paying school fees and the lecturers are not being paying their money, so the morale is accurate role. The other thing which is affecting the quality of education is the teacher-student ratio. The students are quite many as compared to the number of lecturers which they have. That's something that needs to be addressed if you are going to maintain the quality of education, which in my view has gone down. I also would like to say that it had been proposed some time ago, I don't have the dates, that I think it's with effect from last year or the year before, that anybody teaching the university was required to have a PhD. It was not possible, because the number of PhD being generated locally, and even people from outside doing PhDs, they are not adequate to fill those gaps. And also because of the poor pay, poor chances of career progression, people with PhDs are choosing to go elsewhere, maybe in NGOs, in government, where they can get a better earning, and of course the quality of life goes up. So I think we need to address in details how we can increase the morale of the university, both the students and the lecturers themselves. Finally, I would like to mention that the role of the university, one of the key two roles of the university is teaching and research. Right now, most lecturers, in the universities do not have access to funding for research. So it means that there's no research going on at the university. And if it's going on, it's going at a very low pace. And when there's no research, then it means that the country is not benefiting from this investment in education. So that's something you have to look at. And I conclude by saying that the problem at the universities is just too big. The mere factor that Magoha is going to give guidelines on the intakes does not solve anything. He's just doing his work as a CS, and he's showing Kenyans that he's delivering. maybe he's convinced the president is delivering, but he has to dig deeper and address the key issues that are affecting our sector. Okay. You remember some times ago, during Moi time, the later years of Moi time, the middle-level colleges were turned into universities. So you lost big opportunity for teaching people the diplomas and certificates, which could have relieved the road, which is the university level. Right now, we have two levels of qualifications. You are either a Form 4 or a graduate, and which is actually something that must be addressed, because we have got many graduates out there with that job or doing jobs which they are overqualified to do.
All right. Well, interesting, and we definitely hope CS Magoha is the right man for the job, having particularly dealt with university management. Afa, you wanted to add something?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Jesse, it's for me, it's very ironical that at the same time that we are setting ourselves the ambition of 100% transition, we are reducing the budget, the support to the universities. We are reducing help, and we are not saying anything about the expansion in infrastructure in the universities. I mean, if you recall, when President Kibaki came into power in 2003, one of the first things he did, which I still think is a great thing, was to say free primary education and every child must go to school. Great. Schools grappled with infrastructure problems. Up to now, there are schools that are still experiencing problems of infrastructure, congestion in classrooms, student-teacher ratios that are very anti-quality, if you like. And therefore, the way to do it would have been to have a plan, improve the infrastructure, do a survey that gives us optimal numbers. For example, if you're in a middle-level college, what are the optimal teacher-student ratios, and the universities as well? Come up with those ratios. We then set ourselves an ambitious program of improving infrastructure and improving teaching numbers. By the time we are implementing it, and we could face it, by the way, say if we are at 50%, let's be at 60% next year.
Right.
And we would look a much more organized nation, we would be more realistic, and we would avoid a situation where we are on rhetoric. And it's surprising that these days the Minister for Education is so much on rhetoric and very little on actual thinking that is based on planning, and is then seen to have deliverables in the end. But if you think about that reduction in budget, how is it that every year we are moving from 1.7 trillion to 1.9 trillion to 3 trillion budget, and yet we are reducing the contribution to education? How is that possible for a nation that is ambitious and a nation that wants to be a leader in the region? How can we be reducing our budget on education and yet at the same time saying we want 100% transition? And of course, you know, the TTIs are a good opportunity, if you ask me, because some of them are still under construction. A lot of them are in young phases, taking in people. Those are essentially mid-level colleges that offer technical skills. But even then, do we have guidance to this TTI? Because I was involved in founding a TTI, and we started the construction of the TTI. Is the Ministry of Education, the TVET arm of it, giving guidance to this TTI, which are disaggregated and decision-making is being made at lower levels? Do they give guidance in terms of what the market needs for the next 5 years, for the next 10 years, 20 years? If a TTI, for example, decides that we are going to be specialists in masonry and carpentry or automotive engineering and stuff like that, do those people understand what that means for the market?
All right.
And therefore for the prospects of the students that they are going to graduate from those colleges? I think we need to be scientific in the way we manage our education. We need to have a database of quality information that is not only generated at the ministry level, but also shared with the stakeholders down to the schools, down to the tertiary institutions, even the junior ones.
Okay.
Of course, the other thing that's important is that the quality of career counseling for these students. If you say the portal will be open for these students to make decisions on whether they want to change the course they've been admitted to or not, great. I think that's a great thing to have. Do these students have sufficient career counseling so that they can go there and pursue courses that are aligned to their strengths and courses that mean something for their lives after college?
Okay.
So it needs to be strengthened down to the primary school level, so that when students come up, you meet a lot of students who are graduating from college, but they have no clue what the utility of that degree is. And that's very dangerous, because we end up with people who have gone to a level of education, investment has been put into them, but they end up frustrated because the inputs in terms of information for decision making were not right from the beginning.
Okay, so making an informed decision is definitely something we can't overlook. Gentlemen, since we're talking about budget issues, and of course we have seen headlines time and time again on the late disbursement of funds to counties by the National Treasury. Today's dailies inform us that Homa Bay healthcare workers are set to strike over delayed salaries. This coming in the backdrop, we're fighting a pandemic. Of course, we have a surge in number of cases recorded of coronavirus in the Lake region. What does this speak to? I might want to interrogate Kyoko's views on this briefly. What's your take on this? Because late disbursement is definitely dragging us back, especially in the gains achieved through devolved health. What's your take on this?
Disbursement is a question of collection. You must collect in order to disperse. And collection is based on the economic environment and the economic activities that are happening in the country. Now, today as we stand, because of the COVID pandemic, what can be collected? You read, I think last week, budget review, not budget review, but KRA saying they've missed the target by quite a number of things. So it means collections are low. Secondly, there are statutory obligations that must be met. Loans that have been taken and are falling due at the right time that needs to be paid. So the loans have to be paid. Salaries of central government and projects of central government must happen. Then, as an afterthought, is when you say, now we need to deal with county government. So the disbursement to the county governments are happening in a delayed manner. And when they get into the county government, what happens is also there's prioritization within the county government structure. So you find something is secured, can be done. What cannot is not prioritized suffers and falls through the cracks. That is why it is very possible to read that Homa Bay health workers haven't been paid, yet health workers, let's say in Makueni, or health workers in Kiambu have been paid. Then you ask yourself, what different disbursement mechanism was utilized? It's just the prioritization at the governor's level once the fund hit the account. But the truth of the matter is, as a country, we are under dire straits economically. We are living beyond our means. Every 3 months, the government is going into the private sector. They are floating bonds. You see them. And even the appetite for the bonds, in so many ways, has kept depreciating over time because people are seeing what it means. Now, in that situation, collections by the government, moving into the money market every so often, reduces credit availability to ordinary people, me, you, and other person who goes to the bank. When that credit opportunity is shrunk, what it means is that trading or getting facilities to trade keeps shrinking, and therefore the government gets hurt times two. So this is just a vicious circle of poor economic decisions that have been done and are hurting us. It might not be fair to blame the governor, but we must see this thing in the overall sense for what it is. And it also begs the question, if today the government at disbursements level of 15% is not able to, when we move the percentage to 35%, as proposed in the BBI. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but let us also interrogate, how are we going to manage this new allocation of 35%, and we are having challenges today in meeting, timely meeting of the 15.
So it definitely points a bigger picture, but of course proponents of BBI argue the economic trials and tribulations of right now will not persist. They're looking forward. But of course, Arthur Dera, as we conclude on press review, I cannot fail to talk about the issue of floods. Just recently, we saw a story covered right here on KTN, how a young girl actually had to get a boat in the middle of the night around 3 a.m. and navigate her way in darkness with a mother who was expecting. She just got into labor pains in the middle of the night and make her way over 30 kilometers to a health facility. It's quite dire. And of course, today's Standard has definitely painted a picture of the best way Michelle Kadogo, a class 4 pupil at Budalangi, could make it to a nearby market. She's submerged past her knees and she's wading through the waters. Well, what's your take on this? Because time and time again, since time immemorial, we've had of flooding issues, perhaps centered in Budalangi and other areas in the country, but very few mitigation efforts in order to alleviate the suffering of those who are affected.
Every single year in this country, Jesse, we lose people to floods. And the irony of it in certain places is that there is drought most of the year, and then when it rains, floods wreak havoc. Yeah. If you take Turkana, for example, strategic interventions in water storage could be the solution we need. Because when the water comes, ordinarily, rain is a blessing. We view it like that, especially in areas where people keep animals. People need water for domestic consumption. We need water for our crops. Even in Turkana, where there isn't a lot of agricultural activity going on, they still need water for the animals and for domestic consumptions. Why is it that as a country, we've not been able to have this strategic, and even only in terms of water storage and perhaps distribution to nearest places, where then you can stimulate economic activity? Because if you store water and are able to distribute it, you then give people in arid and semi-arid areas options on settlement. Because right now they rely almost fully on oasis. Yeah. And if an oasis then is compromised, that community has to find a new habitat because there is no, yet rain falls. And I'm reminded of many occasions where in Turkana and northern Kenya, floods have wreaked havoc. But the other thing, of course, is we have a meteorological department. We have a ministry that is in charge of that. Where are our early warning systems? If we want to save lives and to save damage to property and generally damage to, hurting our way of life, you have to have early warning systems that warn people that at this point in time there is likely to be flooding in this area. Okay. What do we do about it? And, I was told a story of a place in Kenya where there is perennial flooding. And I was told that in that part, certainly when I was in school, I don't know about now, I was told by a guy who came from there, a classmate of mine, he said, in our place, because what you have in terms of vegetation is generally shrubbery, there's not many trees. The water comes every time at a certain season in the year, and it takes away our houses, our animals, all our crops, and it also carries away our latrines. So the people of that area learned that there's no point in digging latrines and building them. So when somebody wants to have a long call, they will go and crouch somewhere behind a shrub. If there is no shrub, they close their eyes and hope that nobody sees them. That is the lack of dignity that this kind of thing exposes people to. Apart from loss of life, it also strips people of dignity. So where are our early warning systems? Where are our interventions? And you see, some of our disaster management capability has been transferred to the counties. Each county has a disaster management arm, complete with some equipment and a fund with which to have interventions. All right. Do we have a strategic approach? Because one of the dangers we face with county governments is what is called drift, that each county decides what they want to do, even though it may not be strategic, it may not be aligned to the national policy and strategy, and therefore may end up being ineffective in a way it is implemented at the local level. We need this to be done aggressively from the national level. Instead of this water being a menace to people, let's turn this water into a blessing. Store it, have dams and ponds in different places, let this water be available. It will be part of spurring this economy over time.
All right. Well noted, Authoritative. Of course, more details on the latest developments in today's dailies. Make sure you grab yourself a copy, or you can access the e-paper through our platform, standardmedia.co.ke. Allow us to take a short break right now. When we come back, we talk about various developments that have happened in the course of the weekend. And of course, a lot of talk on cultural kingpins following the coronation of Speaker Justin Muturi as the Mount Kenya spokesperson. One or the other will get to interrogate this particular matter and what gravitas it holds, especially politically. Not just that, Martha Koome, Chief Justice, the 15th in the country and the first female Chief Justice in